Here's the thing, right? Despite however much money is being spent by a business in order to invest in marketing and put people into the funnel, into the sales funnel, at the end of the day, the consumer is living where the information is, which is online. The reality is that from that engagement, it still, today, ends up being either a showroom walk-in, an inbound telephone call, or a digital inquiry.
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed since I was retailing, and that was some time ago. The single biggest way to get the best conversion and help guide the consumer from going from undecided to decided to buy from you as opposed to anybody else is to be able to engage from a digital inquiry in literally seconds and have a telephone conversation with them, to introduce yourself, build empathy, and take the customer out of the market.
Time to talk about the man behind the mic and the headphones. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and your position as well, please.
Okay, so my name's Alistair Carmichael, and I'm from a technology business called Calldrip. We're based in Manchester, in the UK, is where our corporate headquarters are, and I'm the VP for sales for the UK and developing markets. Our business is all about sales performance improvement across both sales and after sales for any type of business, really, in any sort of product vertical. Having said that, we're most famously known in the automotive industry, and about 90% of our global revenue comes from the automotive sector.
And how do customers kind of qualify that they need you? How would I, if I was a customer, for example, how would I know that I need you guys?
I guess anybody that's identifying opportunities in their business to improve performance around sales conversion, predominantly in the first instance from digital inquiries, would come across us as being a provider in that sector, where our technology, when deployed, enables you to improve sales conversion initially through speed of response. But then subsequently, when working with us over a period of time, there's a number of different tools and parts of our technology that improve performance in a number of different areas. Things around the quality of the calls, the scripts that are being used, and providing a window into your entire business in terms of all the digital touch points and inquiry lead sources you've got and your performance against those. It's funny actually, people actually pigeonhole us as a speed of response tool, but actually I believe the most significant value in our product suite is the insight, the data and the analytics it gives you around the entire performance and the attribution of all leads that are coming into the business. So if you're somebody in a business that's managing a performance or you're looking to improve performance, then that's how you would kind of qualify a need for us.
Yeah, it's a shame you get pigeonholed like that, like you say, but it's speed of response is a big thing in this industry, isn't it, these days? Where do you live at the moment? Where are you?
So I live in Stockport, just south of Manchester.
Yep. Are you there with your family?
I am. People tell me I sound like Ashley from Coronation Street.
I'm not a big Corrie viewer, but I know who you mean.
Yeah, I'm not a TV watcher, if I'm honest, but I know who they mean.
Just keep playing on it.
Absolutely.
If people are just listening to this, we could just pretend you are him.
Yes, absolutely. I was born in Sheffield,
Yep.
and when I was 11 or 12 years old, I moved to Stockport because of my parents' job.
Yep.
And I've been there ever since. I think I'm an honorary Manc now, according to most people.
There's worse things to be, I think, in that case. And going back to your education, so how did you find your way into the automotive industry right in the early days?
So I was part of the YTS scheme, youth training scheme.
Oh, wow, okay.
My parents are both from the insurance industry.
Yep.
And spent their lives managing risk for the organisations that they worked for, and were always really interested in me getting a job in either insurance or banking because it was really safe.
Yep.
And the only thing I ever wanted to do as I was growing up was be a technician. Formula One technician would have been the dream, but a technician nevertheless.
Yep.
So I've always had petrol in my veins from about the age of 3 or 4 years old. So I left school and decided not to go into higher education, decided to go into a YTS and start life on the tools,
Yep.
learning my trade as a technician. When it became really clear, really quickly, that, there was a few parts of that journey, really, that became clear quickly. One was that I wasn't very good. it was
It's
obvious.
a crushing discovery, isn't it?
Yeah,
we've all been there.
Yeah, and that's the only thing I'd ever wanted to do throughout my childhood and my adolescence. You know, most vehicles that came in for repairs, more stuff got broken than was repaired when I was tinkering under the bonnet. It was clear that I had a level of intelligence around engineering and a passion for the way cars are made up. That you know, there was a place for me in the industry, but I wasn't very good on the practical side, and it also became clear fairly quickly, by the amount of time I spent at the parts counter, that my mouth was probably the best asset that I'd got. So I was swiftly put into service, parts, service reception, paint and body, and then into the showroom, you know, through sales, sales controller, after sales manager, and then dealer principal.
Okay. And for people that are perhaps just starting their careers, or they want to get into this, like you mentioned earlier, like a lot of our guests, you've got petrol in your veins, I guess you love cars. For people that are in that point of their lives themselves, but perhaps see the leap into the automotive industry as being a little bit too big, almost impossible, what's your advice for them? But based on your experience of getting into the industry, what would you advise them?
I think what's really interesting is, and it was similar to one of the sessions that I sat in earlier, the industry's changing significantly. And it's a really, really great time to be involved in the industry when it's going to go through so many changes. Yeah. Some of the changes that we're going to go through around retailing, and particularly around the technology behind cars and the way in which they're propelled, I'm not entirely sure that's the right thing for us. Okay. But we're going to go through it anyway.
Why do you not think it's the right thing?
I'm not entirely certain that anybody's got the right solution yet. Okay. From a personal perspective, and it's purely a personal opinion, for me, hydrogen is the answer, without a doubt. I'm not entirely sure that electric is right. Okay. I see a lot of benefits, and was somebody who very nearly owned an electric vehicle recently and made a decision not to buy one. But I think in terms of infrastructures and what's needed in order to service human beings driving electric cars, I think, you know, there's an awful lot we don't know yet, and there's an awful lot we're going into quite blind. Yeah. That being said, what I do know, and what I believe and what I see from the customers we deal with, is that the industry is changing, and we're moving into an era where something that I'm really quite passionate about is product geniuses. Okay. People that work in a localised centre that can deliver a great experience for the consumer around the delivery, introduction and understanding the vehicle. And there's a few manufacturers are looking at moving to that model. Okay. So I think that anybody who's, you know, looking to come into the industry, there's a number of roles today that perhaps weren't there when I was when I was looking to get into the industry, the role of digital marketers, product geniuses, that kind of thing. Yeah. And when we think about the amount of technology that's going into a car today, taking all of that into account, I think it's going to be an exciting time for people that are new and looking to get into it. Yeah. The question is what your route in is going to be. And I know some manufacturers and some groups run some great apprenticeship programs. And I think there should be more of that. Okay.
And aside from apprenticeship programs, are there any other routes in, any other common routes in? Because, like, as you say, it's a very exciting time. But for example, if you're a marketer who happens to love cars as well, they may be listening to this and thinking, sounds great, but it's just, where do I start? And if an apprenticeship isn't quite what they want to do, are there any other things they can do to get in?
Yeah, I think there is. I mean, there's the obvious routes through higher education. You know, a lot of people that may be studying marketing, for example, and understanding consumer behaviour, and you know, people that are in technology businesses or studying technology, people that are studying data and analytics, people that are marketeers and training to be marketeers, anybody who's got a real passion for automotive and for cars in particular, but is in any of those kind of educational areas or that type of business where they might be in marketing today, there's definitely a role for them to play in automotive retail without a shadow of a doubt.
Just go for it then, basically. Just try and find your route in, your own route in.
Yeah, one of my colleagues in our business, in fairness, started life as a data analyst and as an accountant.
Okay.
and then spent 10 years as a group marketing manager for one of the AM100 top dealer groups.
Right.
And he's an individual that absolutely loves the industry and really, really homes in on the data. And when you've got somebody with a marketing flair that's able to fuse that with the analysis and the analytics around the data, that's really, really powerful.
It is in this day and age, isn't it? Like you said. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, tell us a bit more about your business. What would I gain from working with you guys? What's the key kind of benefit?
There's a number of benefits, to be fair. The first one is obviously that speed of response gives you the opportunity to provide a industry-leading guest experience, and that's not just about utilising things like auto response to emails or whatever the case may be. There's a number of different ways that a number of different businesses respond, depending on how they're set up and depending on what resources they've got in place. One of the key benefits of our technology is that we honestly believe that the single biggest way to get the best conversion and help guide the consumer from going from undecided to decided to buy from you as opposed to anybody else is to be able to engage from a digital inquiry in literally seconds and have a telephone conversation with them to introduce yourself, build empathy, and take the customer out of the market. And subsequently, as a result of that conversation that takes place, because of the tracking, because of the recording of the conversation, and the transcribing and the critiquing of the calls, it enables you to use our technology as a training and a coaching tool as well to coach your staff and look at resources to make sure you've got the best possible resources in the business in order to get success.
Yeah, is it fair to say that with responding to digital leads these days, because they come from so many different channels, is that one of the biggest challenges that businesses face in this industry, do you think?
I think it is, yeah. I mean, there's an awful lot of different calls to action and an awful lot of different lead sources and different platforms. So you've obviously got, if you're a franchise motor dealer, you've got manufacturer's website, you've got your own website, you've got third-party marketplaces, you've got social media. And obviously with the onset of data protection and the GDPR, you've got an awful lot of businesses that are not mandating the fact that you should put your telephone number in order to engage. So of all the volumes of leads that come in, there'll be some of them have got telephone numbers, some of them haven't. Some of them, some of the consumers will want responding to by email only. Some will be happy to connect on a telephone. If you use a tool like ours, it's very, very easy to be able to segment those and understand which ones have got the contact details and which ones haven't, and then subsequently deploy the right approach in terms of response. The challenge for retailers today is that if they're advertising and listing inventory, or they've got themselves in front of the consumer on a number of different lead sources or platforms, it can be quite difficult to segment all the information, especially from somebody that's agnostic and is just reporting on the data rather than somebody representing that platform who's reporting the information back. And it's sometimes difficult to get the lead to the right person at the right time. And it's difficult once you've done that in order to get accurate information back as to what's happened with the inquiry. One of the key benefits about our technology, if you like, is first of all, it is agnostic and we just report on what we see across the entire data. And the other thing is that there is nowhere to hide. So, agents are going to get connected with that inquiry or they're not. And if they don't, then you've missed an opportunity. And if they do, at that point, we've got all of the evaluation and attribution around that journey for the consumer to be able to report on performance, but also use it for praise and look at best practice. Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of how it works.
Yeah, you've mentioned a few challenges there that the industry faces. Have you got, I'll put you on the spot here, top 3 tips for navigating those challenges?
Yeah, so I guess here's the thing, right? Despite however much money is being spent by a business in order to invest in marketing and put people into the funnel, into the sales funnel, at the end of the day, the consumer is living where the information is, which is online. The reality is that from that engagement, it's still today ends up being either a showroom walk-in, an inbound telephone call, or a digital inquiry.
Yeah.
And that hasn't changed since I was retailing, and that was some time ago. The fact of the matter is that across all those three engagements, you've got to be able to deliver an industry-leading guest experience. So that the consumer will move from undecided to decided and buy from you. And one of the things that I find really interesting today is that not everybody has got all of those three covered off. So the first thing is look at how you're engaging with people and make sure your process is right. The second thing is I still believe today that I see across a number of businesses there's a disconnect between what marketing are doing and the function of spending that money to put you in front of the consumer, and sales management in terms of then engaging with the consumer. So there isn't an awful lot of work that's done collaboratively or very closely around making sure that the money that's being spent is being handled correctly. And the other side of that is around efficiencies. For me, there seems to be a need for quite a close working relationship and collaboration between finance director, marketing director and sales director around making sure we look at every single opportunity. So I would be, first of all, making sure we're delivering a really great guest experience no matter which medium that is. Secondly is making sure that the key stakeholders in the business, the executive stakeholders, are really aligned on what they're measuring and what the importance is. It just doesn't end at spending the money. It's then about how you manage the lead. And the final thing is around this thing we talk about a lot internally in our business around me-commerce, around the fact that consumers will want to engage with businesses on whatever device they want, whenever they want, whatever time of day. So I'm not suggesting for a minute that we have sales agents and managers with matchsticks in their eyes up till 11 o'clock at night. But if I
although some do, I'm sure.
I'm sure. If I was retailing today, I'd want to be able to engage with the consumer between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. in the evening. And what some people consider to be, you know, you can't contact somebody after a certain time, that's your opinion. Whereas actually the data and insights and the consumers are telling us that that's not always the case. So you've got to be there. And you've got to be quick. Absolutely.
Just focusing on one of the things you said there, you mentioned a couple of times an industry-leading guest experience. How do you define that? If I'm the guest or the customer, what would I experience as at that level?
It depends on what your approach is, I suppose, and what your style of trading is. What we see is that if we look at some of the best practices, we've got around 6,000 rooftops worldwide use our technology, and we look at the best appointment setting businesses in the world, or those that have got the best possible conversion. If we look at the talk tracks and the scripts that they use on the phone, if we look at the way in which they handle the consumer in the showroom, everything is always revolving around giving that industry-leading guest experience. And, you know, using one example, which would be around telephone calls and the quality of those, it's about the only thing I ever want to do on a telephone call with a consumer is make a new friend. So I'm looking at building empathy and asking a set of questions which enable me to get to know the customer better, understand what their needs are, and looking to solve for those. If I can do that on a telephone call, I'm pretty certain I can get commitment from somebody. Today, using that one example, you will find that, you know, franchise motor retailers are looking to go through a certain type of process because they have to. And that's either for compliance reasons or for brand reasons or their own internal reasons. And there's a lot of really good reasons why we have to do that. But sometimes we lose sight of the fact that it comes down to a basic telephone conversation between two people.
It's back to basics, isn't it?
Absolutely it is.
I think, like you said before, nothing has really changed, has it, apart from the technology that surrounds sales teams and marketing teams, really. Outside of your own business, what else, or what other businesses or people, influencers, etc., should people look out for in the motor trade?
I would look at some of the really great industry commentators that are out there. We've got some really good international partners, so you know, individuals spring to mind. So Simon Bowkett at Simco Training in the UK is somebody that I personally follow and look to in terms of getting back to basics and providing some really great training and coaching. And you know, is somebody that's got quite a high profile and puts good quality content out there for people to look at. Internationally, you'd be looking at somebody like Paul de Vrij, Rise in the Netherlands, who's our partner over there. People that are working with dealers and retailers and vehicle manufacturers every day, understanding the challenges to those businesses and looking to solve for them by putting solutions in place.
And how do you reckon, for people that are watching or listening to this, how do you find those people? And once you find them, how do you stay in tune with what they're saying and keeping on top of their input?
Social media is obviously a great one, and in terms of social media platforms, you'd look at LinkedIn. Obviously, being from a B2B perspective, is somewhere where you can get an awful lot of really good content and link in with people and make those personal connections with them.
Yep.
Failing that through YouTube, online channels, things like that. I tend to read as much as I can and be like a sponge with the peers that I've got around me. And to be honest with you, one of the really great things about that is that we're all kind of focusing on the same sort of challenges, in terms of we know the challenges that are facing the industry and we're looking to try and support people and solve for them.
Excellent. Go back to your own career, and for these next two questions you don't have to name names. For one of them you definitely won't want to name names, but for the first one, who's your best boss and what was the reason for them being your best boss?
I guess my best boss was somebody that I looked up to in one of the groups that I was working with, that I spent 8 years working there. This was an individual who was the business leader and owner, and eventually sold out to a PLC. And the whole premise of all the training that anybody got in the business, regardless of what area of the business you worked in or what position, was around making sure you looked after the customer and around the attitude you had towards customer service. And that person's that person's approach, if you like, was all around the fact that if you look after the customer, the money will come as a byproduct of that. And actually, first and foremost, that's what you should do.
Yep.
Now, fast forward that to today, and despite everything we talk about in the industry, and no matter how complex it is or how complex we make it, it still boils down to that very premise of looking after the right people, looking after staff, looking after the customer, and everything else will follow. So he was an individual that was inspiring, and an awful lot of what we did in the entire group seems like really basic stuff, but to be able to do that consistently, day in, day out, for a number of years was really, really powerful. The worst experience was probably, and it was a very short experience for me, which was probably best for them and for me, was working for a PLC where on my first day of working there, the person I reported to told me that he would explain something to me twice and then he would tell a new man.
Wow.
Which was probably fairly typical for the era, if I'm being honest with you.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And typical of the size and scale of the group involved.
Yeah.
But it was a sentence that came out of the person's mouth which has never left me.
I can imagine.
And needless to say, I went home after that first night and thought to myself, what on earth have I done coming to work with this organisation?
In a way, though, I suppose, even though, like you said, that's probably your worst experience of a boss, we've spoken to other people who have said that their worst and best boss was actually the same person because they teach them something. Yep. What did you learn from that experience?
Oh, as you'd expect, I learned an awful lot about how not to treat people, how not to look after people, and how not to train and coach and lead people.
Yep.
So, you could say the same in a lot of respects, in that it was a really, really good learning curve to be exposed to that environment. And in fairness, this was a person in terms of seniority where that type of management style cascaded to, middle and senior leaders in the business elsewhere.
Trickled down, yep.
Yeah, so it was an awful experience, but it was one that was great learning, I should say.
Yeah, you'll never forget those experiences. And lastly, what would you say to someone who's experiencing that with a boss? So if they're sitting here listening, thinking, yeah, that sounds like my boss, what would your advice be to them?
Well, the first thing I'd say is that not everybody's like that. So look outside of the immediate circumstances that you've got.
Yep.
Get into a network when you can work with like-minded people such as yourself.
Yep.
Surround yourself with people that you admire and respect. And take the current experience you're going through as really, really good learning in how to shape your own career to do things completely differently and turn it on its head. And then if it's an organisation you're in where that's the feeling that you've got, you know, get out. You know, they don't deserve you.
The world's bigger, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
Great advice. Excellent. Good stuff. Okay, Alistair, obviously you're pretty much the first person, we may as well mention it, in our new studio.
Okay.
You're our inaugural guest. What's the experience been like today at the Armchair Show?
Good. It's an unbelievable setup, to be honest with you. It was a bit of a surprise coming into the studio. When I saw the documentation and that it was a studio, I had my own thoughts of what that might look like. But this has absolutely blown my expectations, I have to say. Yeah, it's been really, really good. The team have been really welcoming. The setup and the office space that you've got here is fantastic. I've been invited to come and drop in and use the facility whenever I like, and I can absolutely tell you that I'll be taking you up on that.
Sort of place you don't want to leave, isn't it?
No, absolutely it is.
What would you say to people that are thinking about getting involved in the Armchair Show, either from a guest point of view or hosting? Because obviously our catchphrase really is to help people in the trade learn, prosper and grow. What would you say to people that are looking to do that and perhaps thinking about getting involved in the show?
I'd encourage them to get involved for sure, either as a contributor or as somebody that's looking to learn and understand how they can improve their business. I think the opportunity for us to work collaboratively across the industry as leaders in our field, if you like, or as commentators, is really important, and will provide some really good quality content for people that are facing the challenges of running motor retailing businesses. I couldn't encourage anybody enough to just get on board and you know, watch the show and get to know you guys a bit closer.
Excellent. That's brilliant. Thanks a lot, Alistair.
Cheers.
Thank you.